the new episode of the First Responder Playbook. It is my pleasure to welcome my guest, Bill Jones. He's a veteran police officer, Marine Corps vet, and we're here to talk about the great topic that needs to be addressed in this profession and all across the first responder world. We're going to talk about some PTSD and mental health today. Bill, I didn't give you a good enough introduction. Tell the guests about yourself.
Um, Joined the Marine Corps when I realized college wasn't right for me and needed to grow up. Got lucky, had a mentor who was a policeman and a former Marine, and he took me. And when I joined up, I ended up getting assigned as a 5811. Went to school for an MP, and then served in an MP with Second Marine Air Wing. Spent a lot of time on the West Coast while I was on active duty, and when I got off of active duty and went to the reserve side, my parents were still living around the New Orleans area, so it just seemed like a natural fit at the time to get on with a local department, which was the sheriff's office. And 31 years later, I retired in 2022, and I still carry a reserve commission with the local police department where I live now. But it was a long career.
So let's talk about that. You kind of touched on it, but you said that you realized college wasn't for you. Um, I think that's a topic that, for so long, especially in my generation, it was college or bust. It seemed like it was, college, 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 college. And as the guy that's working on his doctorate right now, I'll be the first to admit that college isn't for everybody. There's trade schools, there's military, there's all kinds of stuff out there. It's just really you should be bettering yourself in one form or fashion, and it doesn't have to be in a college setting. How'd you realize that college wasn't for you, and the Marine Corps of all things was the route you wanted to take?
College for me was a chore. I even was lucky enough. I actually was playing there. I was playing football at a small Division two school. Had a year up there, and I hated going to school. I just knew that this wasn't where I fit. And growing up, my dad was a Marine. My great uncle served and was on Iwo Jima. My dad was a Vietnam vet. And growing up, being joining the Marine Corps always seemed to be just it was going to happen. It was just a matter of when. So I came home from college after that year and was like, nah, I got to find something to do. And believe it or not, I was just watching TV at my parents' house that one evening, and it was their commercial came on, and I walked in my dad's room. He happened to be home, and I was like, Dad, it's time for me to join the Marine Corps. Needless to say, 24 hours later, I had already signed my paperwork, took the ASVAB the next day. By the third day, I was done, and some strings got pulled somewhere is all I know of. And 2 weeks later, I was headed to San Diego for Marine Corps recruit training.
Um, was there ever a thought of any other branch, or was it, hey, I'm doing the best of the best, I'm going straight to
Oh,
the
I
Marine
it was
Corps?
I was going to it was Marine or nothing. That's the way I was. My dad had his issues. He
Yep.
he suffered a lot of PTSD when, now we understand a lot more. But he was one of my heroes, and so many of the guys that had such a big impact on my life. One, what another one is Doug Champagne. I mean, he was a big mentor to me, and he's a former Marine. And I've become so close with other men in my life that are retired Marines and officers, and including one retired lieutenant general. And so these guys all played a big part. So the Marine Corps was just that was it. I never even looked at any other branch.
That's awesome. I love it. So, uh, you hear the horror stories of boot camp. Do you have anything that stood out during your time in boot camp?
The only thing I could ever laugh at now is I had a drill instructor, Harrington, drill instructor Sergeant Harrington. He was just this big giant of a man. And I can remember just a couple of us sitting there one night going, I sure hope he gets in a car wreck. I sure hope he gets in a car wreck before he shows back up. But when it was all said and done with, I've talked to him several times when I was stationed out on the West Coast, and he just was such an important part of my life because he taught me so much. When you have this giant of a man screaming and hollering and pushing you, you realize that your mind is what holds you back. It's not your body.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting experience. I always tell people when it comes to Marine Corps recruit training, it is something I am so glad I did, but I would never do again on purpose.
That's awesome. So you said you became an MP, military police. For those that are not familiar,
Yes, sir.
was that always the plan, or did you want to do something else, or how did you
No,
go
I
down
had
that
no
route?
clue. I had no clue. Again, the night I told my dad that it was time for me to join the Marine Corps, he called Doug. They were friends, and Doug called somebody. And when they were right after I took my ASVAB, they were kind of figuring out what jobs I could do, and they were like, "Hey, we have this job right here." And Doug was like, "Yeah, he's going to do MP." And I was like, "I am." And he was like, "Trust me." And he was just somebody in my life that was okay. If he said, "Trust me," I'm going to roll with it. And I did.
So let me ask you: you get into that role. Did you get bit by the law enforcement bug then, and you knew that's what you wanted to do, or did that once you got out, you were like, maybe I'll just pick it back up. That's kind of what I'd already been doing.
No, when I graduated the law enforcement, the MP school, it was at Lackland Air Force Base. That's where the Marine Corps was sending us back in the early '90s, in '90. And I just felt right. I knew that being a policeman was what God put me on this earth to do.
It's funny you say that. I grew up in a family. My dad was a law enforcement of different sorts for 40 years, state trooper, sheriff, all kinds of stuff. And I never wanted to be a cop. Not one time. I wanted to be a meteorologist. Growing up in Oklahoma, I mean, I know it's kind of shocking, but I love the weather. And I'll never forget. I had a semester left of college, and he was the sheriff. Then he said, "Hey, come ride with one of my deputies." Like, just kept bugging me. At that point, I'd been filling in dispatch during the summer, so I knew most of the guys. Like, but I never had the urge to go ride with them. Like I was too busy chasing girls and watching football. Like I didn't care. And so finally, I went and rode with a deputy that I had a good relationship with, and it was one of those nights to where we went to jail like 3 times. He kept every person he came in contact with had a warrant, and ever since then I was hooked. And we get down to the end of the night, and he's like, "All right, well, it's time for paperwork now." And I was like, "Well, you hadn't scared me off yet, so let's do it." And ever since then, I knew I wanted to be a cop. But I truly believe that every person, gets to that point, and they're like, "That's what I want to do." And whether it's police work, EMS, fire, I highly encourage people to chase your dreams because anybody can do work, but you need to fulfill yourself too. And once you find out what you want to do, go for those dreams.
I have two of my own kids, and then I have two step kids, even though they're my kids. And my oldest, she is literally, I think, 3 hours from her bachelor's, and I told her to go chase your dream. Well, now she's a flight attendant supervisor up in Boston, out of Logan, and loves life. My son is just a mini me, and he's a fireman in this area. And I remember when he came to me and asked me, he says, "Dad, I really don't want to go to college." And I'm like, "Okay, what do you want to do?" He said, "I want to be a fireman." I said, "Okay." And he's like, "You're not upset?" I said, "Absolutely not." And then, I have a stepson who's a musician, in Nashville, chasing that neon dream. And then we have the youngest who is in PA school right now in Tennessee. So I've always told all four of them, find what makes you happy. I watched my son, that he was over here last night because my daughter was in town, and we we were just talking, and both of them love what they do. They love getting up. They love being involved. My stepson, that's a hard life, trying to be a musician. but he loves what he does. And, and then the youngest, she's killing it in school. She's, right at the top. And when all that is done, she's going to be a PA and she's going to enjoy her job. Because if you don't enjoy going to work, I mean, I'm not talking about, oh my God, I got to do this again. I'm talking about, if you're getting nothing out of your job but a paycheck, that makes for a just not an existence that I want. I wanted something that, gave me a meaning and gave me feeling and gave me a sense that I'm actually making some type of difference in the world.
Absolutely, wholeheartedly agree with that. Um, so you get out the Marine Corps, you apply a sheriff's office.
Yes.
Is that where you? Did you have to do your time in the jail, or did they put you directly in the streets? How
Oh,
did that work?
oh, it was awesome. Basically what happened, this was 92. So you are literally just the ending of a Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And the sheriff's office, they had a bunch of veterans, and we all applied about the same time because a bunch of us came off of active duty at the same time. And the sheriff, who at the time, kind of famous in the world of law enforcement, Harry Lee,
Mm-hmm.
he was like, no, if these guys, if they pass the test, if they can do the job, then get them in the academy. And so I got off of active duty that April, and I was in the academy that August. And we did the academy and then went right to the road.
That's awesome. Looking back on it, what was your favorite assignment during your whole career?
That's very difficult for me because I've enjoyed so much. I enjoyed being a detective. I did homicide and robbery for a while, especially the homicide aspect of it, when I was assigned to homicide and shootings, just because of the in depth of the work. Um, I enjoyed being a detective in robbery for a long time because I worked with some of the best guys I know. We just, when you work in such an intimate environment and you work in kind of those cases, you work so much together and you work on each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I was never a great interviewer. That was just not my forte. But my partner that back then, he could interview anybody, but he was about as disorganized as anybody could get. So that's where our trade-off was, is we ran these great cases and we ran these great assignments, and we built a lot of really, really strong things, and we just did on each other's weaknesses and strengths. And I also spent some time in community relations where I got to work with the public. That was enjoyable, but in the end, when it comes right down to it, I guess all my best is being just on the road and just doing the road work.
Yep, nothing like it. Something new every day.
Yep.
Um, so let's talk about PTSD. I think every person, whether military, first responder, they have that build up whether they like it or not. It doesn't matter if you're the biggest, baddest guy out there or, the person that probably needs to be doing something else. Um, it happens. For the longest
Mhm.
time, and I got in on the tail end of it, of you just suffer in silence. Uh, it's slowly getting better, but, everybody's cup gets to a point to where it starts overflowing.
Yeah.
How did you realize that you were having PTSD issues, and how did you start dealing with that?
Well, I will be very upfront and honest. I just from what I've put my body through all those years, I had to have a shoulder replacement. So I went from working every day with this great group of guys, people that had my back, I had theirs, to having my shoulder replaced. And at first it was okay because I was home, and there's nothing like being home getting paid. Well, the next thing I know, you know, I get isolated. I isolate myself. My wife could tell something wasn't right and something's going on. I started getting a lot of nightmares. My mind started, really going to those things that are disturbing that I've seen, participated in, had to be involved in, especially with the police work and some of the homicide cases I worked with. Um, and I just felt the pain all the time. But on top of what physical pain I was enduring, just, as I was rehabbing my shoulder, the weight of the world just was on me. And then, like so many guys do, I went to a friend of mine's house and we were hanging out one day, Memorial Day, actually, in 2022. And it's time to, I did what I've always done when I get like that. And I just start drinking, and I kept drinking and I kept drinking. And I really, I indulged way too much, and I was binge drinking, and something just snapped. The alcohol, as I learn now, your mind's always working, and especially to block those things and keep those lids on all the canisters. Well, when you allow yourself to get like that, especially as drunk as I was, all the lids came off. And so it just felt like everything was on me, and I just felt that the only way out was to actually take my own life. Um, Luckily, I'm married to a social worker who, works with veterans. She works in the VA. She could tell that this wasn't some type of weird aspect, and she knew exactly how to handle it. My son's a grown man. He's a fireman. So, within a few minutes, he was standing right there. And, everybody knew once the police showed up, even though, I was in the state I was in, I wasn't going to hurt a policeman. I wasn't going to hurt an EMT. I wasn't going to hurt a fireman. I would hurt myself, but nobody else was going to hurt them. And that's just the way I felt. And so I got the help I needed. Initially, and then luckily I found an inpatient for 30 days that I went to, and they had a program at the time that really centered on first responders and veterans. So that's when I came to realize I'm not the only one that's going through this. I'm not the only one that's dealing with this. Not the only one who feels the way I feel. And so I took that as a chance to not only get better myself, but to really figure out what's going on. Why? Why would somebody, because I'm very strong in my faith. I know who I am. I'm not afraid of any of that. But suddenly, how can I find myself in there? So I really have done a lot of work, not only through my own therapist, but through some other programs that I've become involved in, to really understand why and how I got there. And I'll be honest with you, I have a goal, is that I'm going to give it all I got to prevent other first responders from ever having to experience what I experienced.
That's a very powerful thing to say because it took in a moment of weakness for you to realize that you had a problem going on and you solved that problem. And I'm sure it's a continuous battle till this day. It doesn't just magically go away. And but the problem I think we run into, especially in the first responder world, is we like to think that it would never happen to us and that it won't happen to us. Looking back on it, do you think that there were some warning signs of it building up in you?
Oh, there were warning signs all over the place. Nightmares. I've had suffered nightmares for years. I had never, there were several trauma incidents that I dealt with and that I was involved in that were stuck in the front. Um, what I mean by that is, because I've learned now, I had never processed them through out of my short-term memory into my long-term memory. They were just stuck right in the front. And what would happen is, everyone goes through ups and downs in life. Well, when, we go through, or a first responder goes through a down, these things start building up again. And, there was a house out where I was working. I couldn't pass the house. Like it actually bothered me to pass the house because I was just on the scene that was there that I was on and I assisted with. It stuck with me for years and I could never shake it, and there are a couple of places like that. And, I just learned that I had just never processed it. I never dealt with what I had to see, what I had to do in several instances. And so that's where all the work came in. EMDR, I do not cannot tell you what it stands for because all I know is it works because that was one of the biggest things that has helped. Because I did see a therapist for over a year afterwards, who's really good. And one thing that I found now, because I'm still so connected and I still talk to all of them, is it's not as much they don't know there's a problem as much as they don't want to admit it. And our jobs and our world is so stigmatized against, there's something wrong with you if you can't handle it. I can't believe that this is bothering you. And I've seen it myself since where I've talked to guys. He's like, oh, I wish you'd come back at least for a little while and help me train, help me mentor some of these young guys because, they're just falling apart over, and it had to do with the death. And I'm like, no, they're right. You're wrong. We were wrong by saying, no, you just suck it up
Mhm.
because that's the worst thing that can happen is because it all gets built up and it's got to come out sooner or later.
Yep. I encourage you to check out one of my previous episodes with a lady named Kara Kalin out of Canada, and she's actually pioneering an EMDR program for first responders that is anonymous and you can actually do online. And
Really?
so you can, yeah, and you can
I'll
actually
check
do it
that out.
like me and you are talking right now. And it sounds like an amazing thing. She's actually just partnered with a police agency up in, I believe it was British Columbia, and they're implementing it for all their officers. And
I will have to look out. My wife is actually EMDR certified because as part of what we ourselves and our personal lives have become involved in, um, one, she knows EMDR works because she's seen it work on me. So
mhm,
she knows it works. And so, one of the biggest thing about talking to people is that they've got to be culturally competent. They've got to understand our world. They can't be shocked by some of the things that's going to come out of our mouths at times.
yeah, I actually that's part of my doctorate. I'm actually working on coaching, and everybody kind of thinks coaching is giving advice, but really what it is just questioning. If I'm having a coaching session with you, I'm using pointed questions to help you realize that you can get to wherever you need to get, whether it's life, career, leadership. Um, but there's such a need for that. I think agencies could implement that in a first responder setting because they for so long we've been told, hey, check your life at the door, and then when you go home, check your career at the door. And they weren't supposed to intersect, and it's not realistic.
Yeah.
But I truly believe that there's a role for these coaching programs out there. That's someone that's not in your chain of command that you can go to and have a coaching session for life, career, leadership, help you get to where you want to be. And then if it needs to go to a higher level of care, to the EMDR or to a therapist or psychiatrist, whoever it may be, let's point you to that direction. Um, but that takes leadership believing that these demons are real, and they are. But
Yeah.
that's the pushback. Is it's slowly getting better, but a lot of agencies don't want to invest in it because that's just another cost to them, and it drives me nuts. Um,
What you're calling coaching, we call peer support.
yep,
Um,
and those are
and
as I've been
and
through peer
I
support
have
training.
I am right now. I mean, because I am peer support certified now. And I am currently trying to get just our local departments to buy into it. And right now it's tough, but
Yeah.
we just got to keep trying to push it. And, because it works, because one thing about PTSD people don't realize, it's preventable. It just is. And it's been proven that it is. And, I'm talking about for first responders, not military, because there's just some things you can't plan people for. You can help prepare them, but there's just some things. But for first responders, PTSD, I believe, is mostly preventable because when you're dealing with something and okay, this is bothering me because of the scientific side of it, fight or flight, all the things we've always known. Well, suddenly you're like, okay, well, it's still stuck right here, no problem. And then you have somebody that understands. Then, oh, hey, I'm feeling this way. Okay, well, let's set a plan. And okay, a couple weeks later or 2 weeks later, 14 days. Hey, I'm still seeing it right there. You know what? Not a problem. Now we need to bring it, maybe, punch it up, into an EMDR situation, where we contact our clinical consultant, those kind of things. And, you know, if we deal with them then we don't deal with them later. And that's
Yep.
the whole thing that's all the guys in my generation. When we started, it was suck it up. We were told, hey, this guy he's shot multiple times. He's dying. You are, I was about 3 days on the road. Now you sit over him and you watch him die. I'm like, okay. So I did. And is it wrong? I don't know. I mean, I saw it and I knew it, I could deal with it. But the fact still remains that, there are people that, even though that situation didn't like really affect me that much, there are people that would, because what we know about trauma is, especially in the first responder world, trauma will affect people in different ways. There's no way to put your finger on it. You can, two policemen, very similar, very much in the same point in their career, can go to a scene and the trauma will affect one and maybe not the other. Okay. But then you go to a different scene. Well, then it's reverse. It affects this one and not that one. So it's all this accumulated stuff that gets put in there. But the stigma is, hey, suck it up, or there's something wrong with you. You can't handle it. And then when you still do start having issues, oh, you're broken.
Yep.
And it's just ridiculous that, because you're not, because how many policemen have, made mistakes or, you know, lost their jobs because of doing something stupid, because that's first responders lose their jobs for doing stupid things.
Yep.
How many wouldn't have made those decisions, those bad decisions, if they would have gotten the help ahead of time? That
Yep.
a lot of that was just some of the stuff that was going on, because, you get cynical and all these other things. No, you don't. You get compassion fatigue. And
Mhm.
you just need to be able to get through that. That's the issues.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. And it's funny, when I went through peer support training last year, that those terms were verbatim the same thing as what you would coach a civilian for. And I was sitting there laughing, and the instructor's like, "Why are you laughing?" And I was like, "Because I'm very familiar with all of these terms, and we've got a good start in Oklahoma. I think there's a group called Warriors Rest that goes around teaching CISM training to a lot of agencies for free, and it's a group of retired military and first responders, and they teach us, and man, they do a good job in it, and I'm wholeheartedly think that that's the future. And again, as the don't take offense, as we get some of the older generation out, we're going to start implementing these programs a little bit more,
Yeah,
because they're needed.
absolutely. Absolutely they are. You know, the worst scene I was ever on, the one that always affected me the worst, and I knew it bothered me. and I actually went to a colonel who at the time I had a lot of respect for. I was like, sir, can I talk to you? And he was like, sure. I'm like, listen, I get it. And, it was bad, but, it's bothering me. And I just don't really understand or how to work. He was like, you just suck it up and move on. Okay. No, absolutely not. But my generation, that's where we were. And that's what we were always told. So what do? We tell others, you suck it up. No, that's absolutely wrong. Because now that I'm the age that I am and that I've, spent the time that I've done, I look back at the guys I know that have committed suicide. The guys that I lost just to, their health that deteriorated so fast when they, got to that retirement time that they never had a chance to enjoy it. My best friend who, here we are, we're planning our retirement together. Like we're both looking, okay, well, you're leaving now, I'm leaving here. What are we going to do together? We were looking at these different things, but, and the next thing, a couple of days later, a couple of weeks later, whatever, he's gone simply because his body gave out or, he had some other health issues and, suddenly, well, now he's gone. But, and it had a lot to do with that and if we can make and get to these people and get to these departments and if we could get the understanding, like, I'm sorry, I'm going to give a shout out to my wife because she's the one who says it the best. If we could get the white shirts to listen and lead on this, we could get it to work. We could get it implemented because there are programs out, like you mentioned, CISM. There's another one, Dr. Tanya Glenn and Associates out of Texas. They're excellent. They know how to do it. They have a peer support programs that are ready to go that can be engineered in for any department and be like literally deliver them to them and say, here you go. Here's a peer support. This is a contract. This is what we provide. And this is about as much as it's going to cost you. And until they take it seriously, that's the guys we've got to get to. And until, some of these younger guys continue to move up. Now, it is getting better, especially where I worked. I recently helped a friend, who went through a tough time. And I will say the department was very, very supportive, allowing him to get the help that he needed. And, he's back at work. And he does great now. I mean, I do my part and I check up on him and, I talk to him regularly, but it's just going to be a matter of the command buying in and understanding that, if we do this, there's a big payoff in the end. It's just like the body cameras. I can remember before body cameras, and all I ever heard was, "Oh, it's expensive. It's expensive. It's expensive. It's the cost." Okay. Well, when they kind of became mandatory or mandated, and suddenly we're all going to body cameras, well, all our complaints and suits and all the other stuff plummeted because it's like, well, no, what are y'all doing different? Nothing. This is what we do every day. The only difference is that when somebody was making a bogus complaint on us, we now have something to back it up to show, no, that didn't happen.
Yep. I agree wholeheartedly. So let's talk about you got your website and your mission that you and your wife are tackling. Tell my audience a little bit about that.
That is Lieutenant Leo. That is my wife came up with that idea. She called it one of her Manic Monday ideas. One of the things that we want to work with in addressing mental health is family separation. First responders spend way too much time separated from their families. One of the things that we're doing, and again, I'm the first to admit I am not a businessman. I am not a social media guy. I am a policeman. That's what I am. But I'm learning and I'm getting better, but still got a long way to go. But what Lieutenant Leo is Lieutenant Leo's a dog, plush animal. It's got a voice box in it. First responder, what they can do is it's designed to where they can record messages over and over again. And the child or loved one, especially a child, when mom or dad, they're working at some odd hour, first responders don't work regular shifts. So they may not be there for bedtime. They may not be there in the morning when it's time to get up and go to school. They may not be home, for Christmas or holidays. They're working. They still have a job to do. That's the life we live. But that first responder can leave that message for that loved one. Now, what makes us different is Lucky. Lucky is a small animal, another small dog, and it also has a voice box in it. And it's where the family member or, a child or any family member can leave a message for their first responder on to Lucky. And that Lucky is designed to go with them. I actually designed it to fit into a carry-all on a front seat of a police car. It's designed and will fit very well into a locker at a fire department because I've made sure, because my son, I told my son, hey, put this in there and just see if it fits. Or, an EMT's jump bag or on the dash of of an ambulance. And, on those tough calls, on those tough nights, the only pushback I ever got was, oh, well, we have cell phones now. At 2 o'clock in the morning, you're coming off a hard scene. You are not calling your 3 or 4-year-old child. You're
Yeah, your
just
wife might
not.
kill you.
Yes, she'll kill you, and she'd have every right. I know because I had kids that age, and I
Yep.
know what it was like. But this gives a chance to hear it. Also, it plays a secondary thing. What we know from statistics is, and studies and science, 4 to 5 seconds. 4 to 5 seconds, you get a break in that moment, and you can break your negative thoughts. Policemen sitting in their car late at night, coming off a hard scene. All we're trying to do is provide anything. They brush that thing and they remember their why. This is why I do what I do. This is what I'm in this for. Okay. I'm providing for my family. There's somebody out there, at least someone, no matter what, who cares about me. Anything to start breaking those cycles. And some of the things that we're doing is, I'm learning how to do social media a lot because again, I have no clue. And where we put different things out where, we talk about taking care of yourself. We always hear that drink water, eat food. Yes, those are important, but there's some other things that are important. Take your time off. Have a hobby. Do something you love to do. Okay. I have 3 hobbies. My wife hates all 3 of them. Well, she doesn't hate fishing, but she hates the other 2 because it takes me away from her. And I get that. And it's a good thing, but it's also, these are some things that I can just be myself and passionate about because it allowed me to break away from the daily routine and the daily rut. So on top of, helping provide, Lieutenant Leo and Lucky and where we're working, people can purchase them. And we're currently working with one department because the chief has said, I want to put one in the hands of every one of my officers. And I'm like, okay. So we've been working with fundraisers for it, and where people can donate to buy 1 or 2. And, we've still got some more to go. So we're still working on it. But, anything to give these guys keep their foundation strong, keep them locked in and keep them grounded as to why they're doing this, and to know that, even in all the noise, there are people that love them and people that have their back.
I love that. I love it. And for everybody, if I may have missed it, but will you tell them the website again so that way they know where to get these at?
MyLieutenantLeo.com. And if you have any questions whatsoever, you can email me at bill@mylieutenantleo.com.
I love it. So as I wrap up, I've got one new thing I've been doing the past couple months on this podcast. If today's your last day on this earth, what's your message for the next generation of first responders to make it better?
Take care of yourself and take care of your mental health. You know, we learn to take care of we learn to take care of ourselves physically. All the tactics, everything we do to take care of ourselves. We learn to take care of others physically and emotionally and mentally. Take care of yourself, because I'm entering into a really great part of my life where I'm retired. I get a check once a month simply because I still live. And there are times I can go do things I don't and just do them for fun. It's worth it. But you've got to be healthy to get there. And I want these guys, I want you to stay healthy. That's what I want.
I love it. Well, Bill, thank you for joining me tonight. And you
Thank you for
are always
having me.
welcome back here.
Thank you for having me. Hey, you ever want me back? I'll be glad to do it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much.